The evening air had a coolness to it, a break from the relentless heat of the summer sun. A gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying with it the promise of rain. As the first drops fell, they bathed the earth in a soft, rhythmic sound. Beneath the large oak tree at the edge of the property, Daniel stood, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The dark clouds above swirled ominously, and the sky flickered with the occasional flash of lightning. "Thunderstorms always make me think of her," Daniel muttered under his breath, his voice low and wistful. His heart felt heavy with the memories of his lost love. He could almost hear her voice in the wind, calling out to him. "I wonder if she remembers me," he thought, his eyes scanning the darkened sky as the rain began to fall harder. The house behind him was quiet, save for the soft rustling of the trees in the wind. He wiped away a tear that had managed to escape down his cheek, but quickly masked it with a wry smile. "No use crying over the past," he muttered to himself. Inside the house, his stepmother, Eleanor, was busy in the kitchen. She had heard Daniel's mumblings but chose not to confront him. Over the years, she had become accustomed to his melancholic outbursts. After all, his heart had been shattered once before by someone who had left without a trace. But Eleanor had her own demons to face, and Daniel's mourning had become an irritation rather than a cause for sympathy. "He's still obsessed with her, even after all these years," Eleanor thought as she stirred the pot of soup. "I'll never understand it. I'd rather have him forget her and move on with his life." Her thoughts were interrupted by a loud knock on the front door. She opened it to find a tall, broad-shouldered man standing in the rain, dripping wet. His face was familiar, though it had aged with time. "Tom. What are you doing here?" Eleanor exclaimed in surprise. Tom, Daniel's father, had been away for many years, working in distant cities. Their relationship had always been strained, but the sudden appearance of Tom was enough to rattle Eleanor. "I heard about the storm," Tom said, his voice rough with emotion. "I wanted to make sure everyone was safe." "It's been a long time, Eleanor." Eleanor stepped aside to let him in, though she didn't know what to expect. The house felt smaller with him in it. The tension between them was palpable, thickening the air around them. "Where's Daniel?" Tom asked, looking around the house as though searching for his son. "I need to talk to him. It's important." "He's outside, as usual," Eleanor replied, her voice cold. "He's been out there for hours, staring at the sky. I don't know what's going on in that boy's head anymore." "I'll talk to him," Tom said, his voice softening. "He needs to hear this from me." As Tom stepped outside, Eleanor watched him go, her heart heavy with unresolved feelings. The past had a way of creeping back in, especially when it was least expected. Tom walked to the edge of the garden, his boots sinking into the soft mud as he approached Daniel. The storm was growing fiercer, the wind howling as the rain fell in sheets. But Daniel didn't seem to notice. He stood motionless, his eyes lost in the distance. Dan, Tom called softly, his voice breaking through the storm. It's time we had a talk. Daniel turned slowly, his face worn and tired. I know what you're going to say, he muttered. But I'm not ready. I can't just forget her, Dad. Tom's face softened with a mixture of pity and concern. I'm not asking you to forget her, son, he said, placing a hand on Daniel's shoulder. I'm just asking you to move forward. You've been stuck in the past for too long. Daniel's eyes hardened. You don't understand. You were never here when I needed you. You left me alone with this. Alone with her memory. Tom flinched at the bitterness in his son's voice, but he knew Daniel was right. I didn't want to leave you, Dad. But I had my own reasons, my own demons to fight. The truth is, Daniel said, his voice cracking, I don't even know if I'll ever get over her. Every day feels like a reminder that she's gone. And I don't know how to live with that. Tom took a step back, his heart heavy. You have to let go, Dad. It's the only way to find peace. I've made my mistakes, but I'm still trying to make things right. For you. For this family. Daniel stared at him for a long moment, his eyes filled with uncertainty. I don't know if I can, he whispered. Suddenly, the rain seemed to lessen, and the storm began to pass. For the first time in hours, the sky lightened. The distant sound of thunder rumbled, but it felt quieter now, as if the storm had moved on. That night, after the storm had passed, Daniel lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His thoughts were still tangled in the past. Her face, her voice, her smile, it all haunted him. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something he couldn't explain. He tossed and turned, finally giving up on sleep. He got out of bed and walked to the window, looking out into the night. The moon was full, casting eerie shadows across the garden. The air was still, and for a moment, everything seemed peaceful. Then he saw it. A figure standing in the garden. His heart skipped a beat. He rubbed his eyes, wondering if he was seeing things. But the figure remained. It was a woman, standing motionless in the middle of the yard, her long dark hair flowing in the wind. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. No, he whispered. It can't be. He rushed out of the house, his heart pounding in his chest. But as he reached the garden, the figure was gone. The yard was empty. Am I losing my mind? Daniel muttered, panic rising in his chest. Was it her? Is she really back? The next morning, Daniel was up early, his mind racing with questions. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Eleanor and Tom were already up, but neither of them seemed to notice the disturbance from the night before. Dad, Daniel said, his voice urgent. I saw her last night. Tom froze, his face going pale. Who? He asked, his voice tight with fear. I saw her. I saw the woman who left me. The one who broke my heart. She was in the garden, right where I saw her last. Daniel's voice trembled with emotion. Tom stood still, his mind racing. It couldn't have been her, Dan. You're just tired. You've been through a lot. But this isn't real. But Daniel shook his head, his eyes wild with fear. It was her, Dad. I know it. And I think she's trying to tell me something. This chapter can continue building up the mystery and tension surrounding Daniel's past and the strange occurrences happening around him, while Tom and Eleanor try to figure out what's happening. The morning after Daniel had seen the mysterious figure in the garden, the sense of unease refused to leave him. He couldn't focus on anything. The shadows of the past were now intertwined with the present, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw her haunting face, her long flowing hair, and the sadness that seemed to have settled in her eyes. Daniel tried to dismiss the sight. Perhaps it was just a trick of the mind. But deep down, he knew that wasn't the case. He had seen her, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she was trying to communicate something that had been left unsaid all these years. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel stood outside once again, looking toward the garden. The memory of her lingered like a shadow on his soul. He glanced back toward the house, where Tom and Eleanor were inside, discussing something quietly. They hadn't mentioned the strange occurrences yet, and Daniel wasn't sure if he was ready to explain it to them. Suddenly, there was a faint sound, a whisper in the wind, almost too soft to catch. It sent chills down his spine. He froze, his eyes scanning the garden once more. And then, just as before, he saw her. She stood at the edge of the garden, under the large oak tree, looking directly at him. Her presence was more powerful than before. This time, he could hear her voice. Come closer, she whispered, barely audible, yet clear in his ears. You need to know the truth. Without thinking, Daniel stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. Every instinct told him to turn back, to leave, but something in her eyes urged him to keep moving. As he approached the tree, the figure didn't move. She simply stared at him, her face filled with sorrow, as though waiting for him to understand something he hadn't grasped before. Daniel stopped just a few feet away. What do you want from me? He whispered, his voice trembling. Why are you here? The woman smiled softly, though it didn't reach her eyes. You've been searching for answers, but the past won't release you until you know the truth, she said, her voice now more distinct, more real than ever before. Daniel felt his knees weaken. His breath caught in his throat. I don't understand. What truth? The woman's gaze never wavered, but for a moment, she seemed to look away, as if lost in thought. "It's not just me you're searching for, Daniel. It's something more. Something buried. The truth about your family. About what happened all those years ago." Daniel took a step closer, feeling a pull he couldn't explain. "What do you mean? What happened to my family?" For the first time, the woman's expression changed. A flicker of fear crossed her face, but it was gone in an instant. "You don't know the full story," she whispered. "But you will. In time." And with that, she faded into the mist, disappearing as quickly as she had appeared. Daniel stood there for a long time, rooted to the spot. His mind was spinning. The storm in his heart raged as fiercely as the one in the sky. What had she meant? What truth was he missing? The next day, Daniel couldn't shake the image of the woman from his mind. He went through the motions of his daily routine, but his thoughts were consumed by what had transpired the night before. The storm had passed, but the emotional chaos remained. That evening, as he sat with Tom and Eleanor at dinner, he noticed something strange. There was a tension in the air, something that hadn't been there before. His father, Tom, seemed distracted, his usually steady gaze flickering nervously. Eleanor, on the other hand, was unusually quiet, as if lost in thought. Daniel couldn't help himself. "Dad, what's going on? Is there something you're not telling me?" Tom looked up, startled. For a moment, his eyes seemed to darken, and Daniel saw something he hadn't noticed before, a flicker of guilt. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by the familiar, weary expression that Tom always wore. "It's nothing, son," Tom said, his voice low. "Just some old memories. I've been dealing with them, but they're not something I want to bring up." Eleanor, sensing that the conversation was taking a turn she wasn't comfortable with, quickly changed the subject. "Let's talk about something else, Daniel," she suggested, forcing a smile. "How are you feeling? You've been looking a little pale lately." Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were hiding something from him. He had to know what it was, and he wasn't going to let it go. That night, unable to sleep, Daniel sat in his room, turning over the strange events in his mind. His gaze shifted to the old family portrait on the wall. He stared at it for a long time, a feeling of unease creeping over him. Something about the image seemed off, as if it were hiding something important. His eyes lingered on his mother's face, her smile warm and comforting, but there was a sadness in her eyes, a sadness he had never fully understood. He had been just a boy when she passed away, and all these years, Tom had told him stories about her, but they never seemed to add up. Was it possible that his mother's death wasn't as simple as it seemed? Was there a hidden truth in the family's past that no one had dared to speak of? The next morning, Daniel couldn't wait any longer. He needed answers. He needed to confront his father and Eleanor, to get to the bottom of whatever secret they were hiding. After breakfast, he walked into the living room where Tom and Eleanor were having their morning coffee. He stood there for a moment, gathering his courage. "I need to know the truth," Daniel said, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "The truth about Mom. About everything." Tom's face paled, and Eleanor shifted uncomfortably in her seat. For a moment, it seemed as if the world had stopped. "What do you mean, son?" Tom asked, his voice tight. Daniel crossed his arms, determined. "I saw something last night. A woman. She spoke to me, and she said that I don't know the full story. She said it's not just her I'm searching for, it's something buried. Something about our family. I need to know what happened." Eleanor stood up suddenly, her face flushed with anger. "You're imagining things, Daniel. There's nothing more to know. Your mother. She was just. Well, she passed away, and that's the end of it. We've all moved on. Why can't you?" Daniel shook his head. "No, I won't let this go. I have to know the truth. If there's something you're hiding, something about Mom's death, I need to hear it now." Tom sighed, his face grave. He looked over at Eleanor, then back at Daniel. "It's time, I suppose," he murmured. "You deserve to know." The room seemed to grow colder as Tom began to speak, his voice low. "Your mother didn't die by accident, Daniel. She was murdered." Daniel's heart raced as his father's words echoed in his mind. Murdered. For a moment, the room spun around him, and the world seemed to shift into a blur. His father, Tom, had just dropped a bombshell that Daniel wasn't prepared for. His mother hadn't died from illness or an accident, she had been murdered. Daniel's mind raced as he tried to process the information. His mother, the woman he had loved and lost, had been taken from him by someone's hands. But who? Why? Tom's face looked hollow, as though the weight of the secret had been too much for him to bear. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" Tom rubbed his temples as though the mere thought of the past caused him pain. "Because I couldn't. It was too dangerous, too much to handle back then. But you need to understand, Daniel, your mother's death was tied to something much bigger than we realized." Daniel could feel his anger rising. "What do you mean by that? Who killed her? Who was involved? And why didn't you protect her?" He shouted the last part, frustration seeping into his voice. Eleanor, who had been standing by the window, finally turned around, her face pale and tight with worry. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, there are things you don't know, things that could put you in danger if you dig too deep. Daniel turned toward her. You knew too? His voice was sharp with disbelief. You knew all along and never told me. How could you keep this from me? Eleanor took a slow, deliberate step toward him. Because some truths are better left buried, Daniel. What your father is telling you, it's not just about the past. It's about protecting you now. If you start asking questions, there are people who will want to silence you. You need to understand that. Daniel shook his head, unable to absorb the enormity of what was being said. I don't care. I need to know everything. I need to know what happened to her. Tom sighed heavily. We were part of something that we couldn't escape, Daniel. Your mother was involved in something dark. Something dangerous. And when she tried to get out, they made sure she wouldn't. Daniel sat there in silence, trying to digest his father's words. The air in the room was thick with tension, and he could barely breathe. His mother had been involved in something dangerous, something that had ultimately cost her life. But what was it? What had she been mixed up in? What did she do? Daniel asked, his voice low, almost pleading. Tom and Eleanor exchanged a glance, and then Tom finally spoke. Your mother wasn't just a school teacher, Daniel. She was an investigator. She uncovered something that no one wanted anyone to know. She had stumbled across a network of corruption, tied to powerful people who would stop at nothing to keep their secrets hidden. Eleanor nodded, her face tense. She had discovered things that she shouldn't have. People didn't like it, Daniel. She was silenced for it. Daniel's mind was reeling. His mother, the woman he had looked up to all his life, had been more than just a loving mother. She had been a fighter, a seeker of truth. But it had cost her everything. I don't understand, Daniel whispered. If she was uncovering all of this, why didn't you stop her, Dad? Why didn't you protect her? Tom's face darkened with guilt. I tried, Daniel. But when it came to that point, she had already dug too deep. There were too many people involved. Powerful people. And when they saw she was getting too close to exposing the truth, they acted fast. They had people everywhere. They made sure she couldn't speak, made sure she couldn't share what she had found. Eleanor's voice broke as she added, and it wasn't just her. We were all caught in the middle of it. We had no choice but to stay silent, to pretend it never happened. Daniel's world had shifted completely. His mother hadn't just been taken from him by illness or fate, she had been taken because of something she had uncovered, something that had put her life in jeopardy. He was no longer the young man mourning the loss of his mother, he was now a man determined to find out the truth, no matter the cost. I have to find out what happened, Daniel said, determination burning in his eyes. I need to know who did this. Tom and Eleanor exchanged another uneasy glance. Daniel, you don't know what you're asking, Tom warned. There are people who will do anything to keep those secrets buried. People who will stop at nothing to protect themselves. You have no idea the kind of enemies you're making by asking these questions. I don't care. Daniel shouted, standing up abruptly. I don't care about the danger. I need answers. I need to know who killed my mother. And I'm going to find out. With that, Daniel stormed out of the room, his resolve hardening. He couldn't go back to living in the dark, pretending that everything was fine. His mother had been taken from him, and it was time for him to take action. The days that followed were filled with tension. Daniel began to investigate his mother's past, following leads that had long been buried. He uncovered old files, documents she had kept hidden, and slowly, piece by piece, he started to see the full picture. The more he uncovered, the more dangerous it became. People who had been part of his mother's life, friends, colleagues, even family members, started to vanish, leaving nothing behind but whispers and rumors. Daniel could feel the weight of the danger pressing down on him, but it only fueled his determination. He would not stop. Not now. Not when he was so close. But as the pieces began to fall into place, he realized something chilling. His mother's investigation had led her to a network far more powerful than he had ever imagined. The people behind it were everywhere, on every level of society, from local businesses to high-ranking officials. They were untouchable. One evening, as Daniel followed yet another lead, he found himself standing in front of an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. The air was thick with fog, and a chill ran through him as he approached the door. His heart raced. He could feel the presence of someone watching him. He pushed the door open cautiously, stepping inside. The dim light illuminated dusty crates and long-forgotten machinery. But something else caught his eye. A small, familiar object was lying on the ground. His mother's pendant. His breath caught in his throat as he knelt down to pick it up. He had seen that pendant before. His mother had worn it every day. This was the proof he needed. He wasn't alone in this. His mother had left him a clue, a sign that her work hadn't been in vain. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence. You shouldn't have come here, Daniel. Daniel's heart stopped as he turned to see a figure emerge from the shadows. It was a man, tall and imposing, with a cold, calculating gaze. You've been digging where you shouldn't, the man continued, his voice low and dangerous. And now, you've come too far. This chapter sets the stage for the final confrontation, building the suspense and tension as Daniel uncovers more about his mother's past. The danger is becoming more real, and the stakes are higher than ever. Daniel's heart raced in his chest as the mysterious figure stepped forward, his eyes cold and unyielding. The pendant in Daniel's hand felt heavy, a symbol of his mother's lost life and perhaps, the key to unlocking the web of lies that had kept her death a secret for so long. "You shouldn't have come here, Daniel," the man repeated, his voice laced with threat. "The truth you seek comes with a cost. A price you're not ready to pay." Daniel stood tall, his anger burning through his fear. "I don't care what it costs. I need to know what happened to my mother. And if you're part of it, I'll make you tell me." The man laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the empty warehouse. "You think you can intimidate me? You have no idea what you're dealing with." He took a step closer, his figure looming over Daniel. "Your mother was a fool to think she could take down the people she did. And now, so are you. Who are you?" Daniel demanded, his fists clenching at his sides. "What is this all about?" The man smirked, his eyes darkening. "The truth is far more complicated than you realize, Daniel. Your mother was involved in something that went beyond what you've been told. She wasn't just uncovering corruption. She was digging into a system, a network that's been controlling everything for years. And she wasn't the first one to try and expose it." Daniel's mind spun as the man spoke. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His mother had been investigating a secret network, one so powerful that it had been pulling the strings for years. But who were these people? And why hadn't anyone stopped them? The man stepped back, his gaze piercing. "You're too deep now, Daniel. You've already uncovered things that were never meant to be found. You'll never be safe again, not as long as you're searching for the truth." Suddenly, the door behind Daniel slammed shut with a deafening thud. He spun around, his pulse racing. The warehouse had become a trap. There was no way out. The man took a step back, his expression growing darker. "There's no escaping this, Daniel. Not anymore." Daniel's mind raced. He couldn't let this be the end. He wasn't going to die in some abandoned warehouse, not when he was so close to understanding everything. His mother's death, the corruption, the powerful people who had covered it all up. He was going to get the answers he deserved. "Tell me what I need to know," Daniel shouted, his voice defiant. "I won't stop until I have the truth. I'll expose everything. You can't stop me." The man's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Daniel saw something flicker, a hint of fear. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a cold resolve. "You still don't get it, do you?" the man said. "You're nothing but a pawn. You've been playing their game, and now, you'll pay the price." Suddenly, there was a loud crash as the side door to the warehouse flew open. A figure rushed inside, a blur in the dim light. Daniel's heart skipped a beat as he saw who it was. Tom. His father. "Dad." Daniel called, rushing toward him. Tom's face was pale, his eyes frantic. "Daniel, get out of here!" he shouted. "Now!" But it was too late. The man in front of them drew a gun from his jacket, pointing it straight at Daniel. "Dad, no!" Daniel cried, but before he could move, Tom lunged forward, tackling the man to the ground. The gun went off, but the bullet missed Daniel by mere inches. The loud bang echoed in the warehouse, the noise deafening in the sudden chaos. Daniel froze for a moment, shock and fear flooding through him. But Tom wasn't giving up. He fought with everything he had, struggling to wrestle the gun from the man's hand. Daniel, not thinking, grabbed a nearby piece of metal pipe and swung it at the man, hitting him across the side of the head. The man staggered, disoriented. But just as Daniel thought he had the upper hand, the man recovered and shoved Daniel away, sending him crashing into a stack of crates. Tom, bloodied and breathless, finally managed to wrest the gun away, holding it pointed at the man. "Get out of here," Tom spat, his voice hoarse. "I won't hesitate to kill you." The man stood, wiping blood from his lip, and for a moment, their eyes locked. Then, without a word, he turned and ran toward the back exit, disappearing into the night. Daniel struggled to his feet, his body aching from the impact. He looked over at his father, whose face was drained of color. "Dad, what the hell just happened?" Daniel gasped, his voice hoarse. "Who was that guy?" Tom didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over to the crates, his hands shaking as he tried to steady himself. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "That man, he was part of the network your mother uncovered. He's one of the people responsible for her death." Daniel's eyes widened. "You knew? You knew all along?" Tom nodded slowly, his face filled with regret. "I didn't want you to get involved, Daniel. I thought I could protect you, keep you safe from all of this. But the truth is, it's bigger than we could have ever imagined." Daniel's head spun. His father had known about the danger his mother was in, and had kept it from him all these years. He had lied to protect him, but at what cost? "I can't believe this," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "All these years, I've been searching for answers, and you kept it from me." Tom closed his eyes, his face pained. "I know. I'm sorry. But the truth is, there's no escaping this now. You're in danger, Daniel. They know you're getting too close." Daniel clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. "I'm not afraid of them. They've already taken enough from me. I'm going to finish what my mother started. I'll make sure the truth comes out." Tom looked at him, his face filled with fear and pride. "You don't understand, son. You're playing a dangerous game. And the people we're up against. But Daniel interrupted him, his voice firm. "I don't care. I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next few days, Daniel began to piece together the puzzle. He dug deeper into his mother's old files, finding clues that led him closer to the people behind the network. He contacted old friends of his mother's, and each conversation revealed more about the secretive world she had been involved in. But the more he uncovered, the more he realized just how dangerous this path was. The network was vast, and it wasn't just limited to local corruption. It reached into government, law enforcement, and the highest levels of power. No one was safe. As Daniel prepared for the next step in his investigation, he knew that his life would never be the same. He had crossed a line, and there was no going back. But he was determined to honor his mother's memory, to finish what she had started. No matter the cost. The tension continues to rise, with Daniel uncovering more about his mother's past, and the stakes becoming ever higher. He's now firmly entrenched in a battle against powerful enemies who will stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. Daniel spent the following days in a whirlwind of investigation. He had uncovered enough to know that the network his mother had exposed was no ordinary group. It was an underground organization with deep roots in every level of society. The more he discovered, the more he realized how far-reaching and dangerous they were. One evening, as he sat in his small apartment, sorting through his mother's old notes, a sudden knock at the door jolted him out of his thoughts. He opened the door cautiously, only to be met by an unfamiliar face. A man, dressed in a dark suit, with piercing blue eyes and an air of quiet confidence. "Daniel," the man said, his voice calm but filled with an undercurrent of authority. "I've been looking for you." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "Who are you?" he asked, trying to remain composed. "I'm Agent Matthews," the man said, flashing a badge. "I've been assigned to help you. Your mother's investigation didn't just ruffle feathers, it set off a chain of events that has led us to you. You're in danger, Daniel." Daniel's mind raced. "What do you mean? I don't even know you." Agent Matthews stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his eyes scanning the room. "I know this isn't easy to understand, but I'm part of a task force that's been tracking this network for years. Your mother uncovered something big, and now, they know that you're continuing her work. Why are you helping me?" Daniel asked, his voice filled with suspicion. "How do I know you're not just one of them?" Matthews paused, as if weighing his words carefully. "Because, Daniel, they're not just criminals. They're connected to people at the highest levels of government. They've been operating under the radar for decades. Your mother and her investigation were just the tip of the iceberg." As Matthews explained further, Daniel's world grew even more complicated. The network his mother had exposed wasn't just about corporate corruption or illegal dealings. It was a web of power and influence that controlled much of the world from the shadows. From the police to politicians, businessmen to military officers, this organization had their hands in everything. They've covered their tracks well, Matthews continued, his expression grim. But your mother found a crack in their armor. And now they're coming for you. They won't stop until they silence you, just like they did with her. Daniel felt the weight of Matthew's words press down on him. He wasn't just investigating a few corrupt officials, he was up against a global network with resources far beyond anything he could imagine. And yet, the thought of backing down never crossed his mind. His mother had fought for the truth, and so would he. I'm not going anywhere, Daniel said, his voice firm. I'll finish what she started. I won't let them win. Matthews regarded him carefully. I don't expect you to walk away, but you need to understand the risks. This isn't just about uncovering the truth anymore, it's about survival. Daniel nodded. He had always known this journey would be dangerous, but now, it felt like he was standing on the edge of a precipice. One wrong move, and it would all be over. Matthews seemed to read his thoughts. I'll be here to help you. But you need to be careful. They have eyes everywhere. Trust no one, not even the people closest to you. The next few days passed in a blur. Matthews provided Daniel with more information about the network, but every lead seemed to lead to a dead end. The deeper Daniel dug, the more elusive the answers became. It was as if the network had anticipated every move, every question he asked. One evening, as Daniel was meeting with Matthews in a secluded cafe, he received a text message from an unknown number. It was short and to the point. Meet me at the old docks. Midnight. Come alone. Daniel's heart raced. He glanced at Matthews, who seemed to sense his unease. Do you recognize the number? Matthews asked, his voice low. Daniel shook his head. No. But I have a feeling this is the break I've been waiting for. Matthew's expression darkened. It's a trap, Daniel. They want to bait you. I can't let you go alone. But Daniel was already standing up, his resolve unwavering. I have to do this. I have to find out who's behind this. Matthews stood as well, clearly frustrated. This isn't just about you anymore. If you go to the docks, they'll kill you. You're walking right into their hands. I'll take my chances, Daniel said, his voice steady. I've been walking into danger since I started this. I can't back down now. With that, Daniel left the cafe, determined to uncover the truth no matter the cost. Midnight came, and Daniel found himself standing alone at the old docks. The air was thick with fog, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore echoed in the distance. He scanned the area, his heart pounding in his chest. Every instinct told him to turn back, but he couldn't. He had come too far to stop now. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. He spun around, but no one was there. The docks were silent once again. "Come alone," the message had said. So why did it feel like he was being watched? Then, out of the shadows, a figure appeared. It was a woman, tall and cloaked in a long black coat. Her face was obscured by a hood, but Daniel could see her eyes dark and calculating. "You came," she said, her voice cold and emotionless. "Who are you?" Daniel demanded, stepping forward. "Why are you doing this?" The woman's lips curled into a thin smile. "You don't get it, do you, Daniel? You've been digging in places you shouldn't. You're getting too close to the truth. And now, you're going to pay the price." Daniel's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what was happening. "Who are you working for? What do you want from me?" The woman took a step closer, her gaze unblinking. "We want the same thing, Daniel. We want you to stop. But unlike your mother, we won't give you the chance to back down. You're too dangerous now. You have to be eliminated." Before Daniel could react, the woman lunged forward, a sharp blade flashing in the dim light. He barely had time to move as the blade slashed through the air, narrowly missing him. Daniel barely managed to dodge the woman's attack, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep this up. The woman was fast, and she clearly had training. He stumbled backward, trying to put some distance between them. "Why are you doing this? What have I done to you?" The woman's smile grew wider. "You're a threat to everything we've worked for, Daniel. Your mother was a problem, and now you are too." Daniel's mind raced. He knew he had to do something, anything to escape. As the woman lunged toward him again, he grabbed a nearby metal pipe and swung it with all his strength. The blow connected with her arm, causing her to stumble back in pain. But the woman wasn't done. She recovered quickly, her eyes narrowing as she prepared for the next attack. "Do you really think you can fight me, Daniel?" she sneered. "You're nothing but a pawn." Daniel took a deep breath, his fear now replaced by determination. "I'm not backing down," he thought, as the fight continued. "I'm going to find out the truth, no matter what it takes." This chapter escalates the tension, with Daniel facing a physical confrontation and the true danger of his quest for the truth becoming apparent. The woman's intentions are clearer now, and Daniel's resolve is tested as he pushes forward. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest as the woman lunged forward again, the glint of the knife catching the dim light of the street lamp. His hands were trembling, but his mind was clear. He couldn't let her take him down. He had to survive, he had to keep pushing forward. The metal pipe felt like an extension of his body as he swung it once more, connecting with her wrist. She hissed in pain, but before Daniel could react, she was back on her feet, poised and ready to strike again. "Who are you working for?" Daniel spat, his voice filled with urgency. Why are you doing this? What do you want with me? The woman's lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth behind it. What we want is simple, Daniel. We want to silence you. You've been asking the wrong questions, digging into things you shouldn't have. Your mother was the first to try, and now it's your turn. You think you're going to uncover the truth. You're going to die trying. Daniel took a step back, his mind racing. He had no idea who these people were, but he knew they were dangerous. They had killed his mother to protect their secrets, and now, they were trying to do the same to him. But he wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. He glanced around quickly, his eyes searching for anything he could use. His heart sank as he realized how isolated he was. The docks were empty, the fog thick around him, and no one was nearby to help. The woman saw his hesitation and moved in. With swift, practiced motions, she raised the knife, preparing to strike a fatal blow. But Daniel, with adrenaline coursing through him, acted on instinct. He swung the pipe upward with everything he had, knocking the knife out of her hand. Enough! The woman screamed, rage flashing in her eyes. But before she could retaliate, Daniel grabbed the knife and held it in front of him, his hands steady despite the chaos swirling inside him. You think I'm just some pawn in your game? Daniel shouted, his voice full of defiance. You've underestimated me. And now, I'm going to finish what my mother started. The woman's gaze hardened as she stepped back, realizing that Daniel wasn't going to be an easy target. She took one last, lingering look at him before turning on her heel and vanishing into the fog. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the encounter sinking in. He had survived. But the danger wasn't over. The woman was just one part of a much bigger puzzle, and now, he was even more determined to uncover the truth no matter what it took. The next day, Daniel couldn't shake the image of the woman's cold smile and her words, "We want to silence you." The warning echoed in his mind, louder than any thunderclap, but Daniel was resolute. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to stop now. The network his mother had uncovered was still out there, and he would find them. He had to. But where to start? He thought about the pendant he had found, the one his mother had always worn. It was more than just a piece of jewelry, it was a clue, a symbol of everything she had uncovered. He pulled the pendant from his pocket and examined it closely. It wasn't just a simple necklace, it had intricate engravings on the back, symbols he hadn't noticed before. Daniel traced his fingers over the symbols, his mind racing. Could it be that these markings held the key to unlocking the final piece of the puzzle? He couldn't be sure, but he knew one thing for certain: he needed to find out what it meant. Without wasting any more time, Daniel reached out to Matthews. The agent had been his only ally in this tangled web of deceit, and if anyone could help him decipher the symbols, it was Matthews. They met later that afternoon in a dimly lit coffee shop, far from prying eyes. Daniel handed Matthews the pendant, watching his face closely as he studied it. This is interesting, Matthews murmured, his brow furrowing. These markings aren't just random. They're part of a code, one that's been used by underground organizations for decades. I've seen this before. But I never thought it would be connected to your mother. Daniel's pulse quickened. What does it mean? What does it lead to? Matthews looked at him seriously. This pendant is a key, Daniel. A key to something bigger, something that could bring down the entire network. But it's also a warning. Whoever made this code didn't just want to hide the truth, they wanted to bury it so deep that no one could find it. Your mother was onto something huge, but she wasn't the only one. Daniel's heart sank as the weight of Matthew's words hit him. His mother had uncovered something that could bring the network to its knees, but in doing so, she had made herself a target. The same target that now, Daniel realized, had been passed on to him. We have to find out what this leads to, Daniel said, determination flooding his voice. If I can just follow the trail she left, I can uncover the truth and make sure her death wasn't in vain. Matthews nodded grimly. You're right. But we need to be careful. This code is ancient, and whoever put it in place was no amateur. If we're going to follow this path, we'll have to tread carefully. They've been hiding their secrets for a long time. Daniel leaned in, his eyes locked on Matthews. Then let's find them. We don't have time to waste. The more Daniel and Matthews worked together, the closer they came to uncovering the full extent of the underground network. The symbols on the pendant were tied to a series of hidden safe houses, secret locations where powerful figures in the organization would meet to conduct their illegal operations. Each safe house was linked to a different piece of the puzzle, and each one brought Daniel closer to the heart of the conspiracy. One night, as they followed the trail to a seemingly innocuous warehouse on the outskirts of town, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The building was abandoned, just as the map had shown, but there was something about it that felt different. He couldn't explain why, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Are you sure about this? Matthews asked, his voice low as they crouched behind a stack of crates. Daniel nodded. I followed every lead. This is it. This is where it ends. They moved cautiously, each step careful and calculated. As they neared the back entrance of the warehouse, Daniel's heart pounded louder in his ears. This was it, the place where his mother's investigation had led to. The answers he had been searching for were just beyond that door. But as they opened the door, they were met with an unexpected sight. Inside the warehouse was a vast network of computers and high-tech equipment. The room was filled with people working, their faces illuminated by the glow of monitors. Daniel's mind raced as he realized what this was. This was the heart of the operation. This was where the network's leaders conducted their business. And he had just walked right into the lion's den. Before Daniel and Matthews could react, the lights in the warehouse flickered and went out. The room was plunged into darkness. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to make sense of what was happening. He could hear the sound of footsteps closing in around him. "Get down," Matthews hissed, pulling Daniel behind a row of metal shelves. "They're onto us." Suddenly, the warehouse was filled with the sound of voices, low, urgent whispers as several figures emerged from the shadows. They were dressed in black, their faces obscured by masks, and they moved with a precision that suggested they had done this before. The leader of the group stepped forward, his eyes glowing in the dim light. He was tall, imposing, and his voice carried an air of authority. "You shouldn't have come here, Daniel," he said, his tone cold and controlled. "You've come too far, and now, you've crossed the line." Daniel's pulse quickened as he realized who this man was. He was one of the leaders of the network. And now, he was face to face with the enemy. "Who are you?" Daniel demanded, his voice steady despite the danger. "What do you want from me?" The leader's lips curled into a smile. "We want you to stop. We want you to stay out of our way. But most of all, Daniel, we want you to understand the consequences of your actions." Daniel squared his shoulders. "I won't stop until I have the truth. You won't silence me." The leader's expression darkened. "You've already made your choice. Now, you'll pay the price." This chapter brings us to a critical point in Daniel's journey, where he confronts the heart of the network his mother had been investigating. The danger is closing in, but Daniel's resolve is stronger than ever. The stakes are higher than ever, and the truth is within reach. The cold winds blew across the docks, but Daniel's mind was racing with a heat he couldn't control. His mother's pendant felt heavy in his pocket, like an anchor pulling him deeper into the mystery that had consumed his life. He couldn't stop now, not when the answers were within his reach. He had to uncover the truth, no matter how dangerous it became. He glanced around the deserted warehouse, the air thick with the stench of salt water and decay. Matthews had warned him about walking into the lion's den, but Daniel felt he had no choice. The truth was here, hidden in the shadows, waiting to be discovered. But something wasn't right. The warehouse, which seemed so abandoned at first, now felt alive, like eyes were watching him from every dark corner. As he crept closer to the inner rooms, the air seemed to grow heavier, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being followed. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, but he couldn't. Not when he had come this far. Daniel reached the room where the computers were, monitors flashing with cryptic data, papers scattered around with symbols and numbers he didn't fully understand. This was where his mother had left her clues, the place she had uncovered the network's deepest secrets. And now, this place was the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. Suddenly, a voice cut through the silence, sending chills down Daniel's spine. "I knew you'd come." Daniel froze, his heart pounding as he turned toward the voice. Standing in the doorway was a familiar figure, Tom. His father, looking more distant and colder than ever before. "Dad?" Daniel asked, his voice filled with disbelief. What are you doing here? What's going on? Tom didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the computers, the scattered papers, the very evidence that had drawn Daniel to this place. His expression was unreadable, but there was a heaviness in his gaze like a man who had been carrying a burden for far too long. Daniel, Tom said finally, his voice low, I didn't want you to find out. But it's too late now. You're already in too deep. Daniel shook his head, his confusion growing. In too deep? What do you mean? You know what this is about, don't you? My mother's investigation, she found something, didn't she? Tom sighed, his shoulders slumping as though the weight of the years had become too much for him to bear. I didn't know how to protect you from this, Daniel. I should have told you the truth years ago, but I couldn't. Not when it meant putting you in the same danger your mother was in. Daniel's mind was racing. You knew. You knew what happened to Mom. His voice shook with anger and betrayal. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me search for answers on my own? I couldn't, Tom whispered, his voice cracking. I was too afraid. This network, it's not just some criminal organization. It's part of something bigger, something that reaches into every level of power. If I had told you the truth, they would have come after you. They would have killed you just like they killed your mother. Daniel felt a cold chill crawl up his spine. You mean to tell me that all this time, I've been digging into a conspiracy that goes to the highest levels of power? That my mother was murdered because she knew too much? Tom nodded, his face pale. It's not just about your mother. They've been controlling everything for years. Your mother's investigation was too close to uncovering their secrets, so they silenced her. And now, Daniel, they're going to do the same to you. Daniel's hands balled into fists. No. I won't stop. I can't stop now. I need to know everything. I need to know who's behind this. Tom's eyes flickered with a mix of fear and guilt. It's not that simple, Daniel. You're playing with fire. You're asking questions that no one should ever ask. And if you keep going, there's no way back. I don't care. Daniel shouted, his voice breaking the silence in the room. I'm not backing down. Not after everything I've seen. Not after everything I've lost. Tom seemed to weigh his son's words for a long moment. Then, with a resigned sigh, he stepped toward one of the computers. If you really want to understand everything, Daniel, you need to see this. He typed quickly on the keyboard, pulling up a series of encrypted files. As the screen flickered, Daniel's eyes widened at the information that appeared: files that were marked with government seals, business contracts that spanned decades, and photographs of influential figures with ties to criminal organizations. Who are these people? Daniel asked, leaning in for a closer look. These are the ones your mother was investigating. And these, Tom's voice faltered as he pointed to a photo of a man in a suit, smiling at the camera. This is Robert King. He's the head of the operation. The man who's been pulling the strings from the shadows for years. Daniel studied the photo carefully. He had seen the name before, but he had never connected it to the network his mother had been trying to expose. King wasn't just a businessman, he was the heart of the organization. The mastermind behind the conspiracy. You're telling me that this guy, Daniel trailed off, his mind spinning. He's been behind all of this. He's the one who had Mom killed. Tom nodded gravely. Yes. King controls everything. And he has eyes everywhere. He's untouchable. But your mother, she got too close. And when she found out what they were really up to, they made sure she couldn't speak again. Daniel clenched his jaw. He had never felt more determined in his life. I'm going after him, he said, his voice steady. I'm going to make sure he pays for what he did to my mother. No, Daniel, Tom said urgently, stepping in front of him. You don't understand. You can't just confront him. He has too much power. Too many people on his side. If you try to go after him, they'll kill you, just like they killed your mother. Daniel's eyes were burning with resolve. Then I'll make sure I'm ready for them. I'll expose everything. If I have to bring down this entire network to do it, I will. Tom's face twisted in fear. You don't realize what you're up against. They'll stop at nothing. The moment you go after King, they'll come for you and they won't show mercy. Daniel's eyes locked onto his father's. I don't care. I'm not afraid anymore. With the information Tom had given him, Daniel knew he was at a crossroads. He had a choice to make: continue to dig deeper, uncovering more secrets, and risk everything, or turn back, safe but ignorant, leaving the truth buried forever. He couldn't live with that. His mother's memory, her sacrifice, demanded that he see this through to the end. But the danger was real. He had seen it with his own eyes: the threat, the violence, the lengths these people would go to keep their secrets hidden. And yet, Daniel knew he had no choice. He had to take this fight to them. He had to find Robert King, confront him, and expose everything. Daniel stood up from the desk, determination written all over his face. I'm going after them, Dad. I'm going to finish what Mom started. I'm not backing down. Tom's face paled, but he nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. Then I'll help you. But you have to be careful. The more you dig, the more dangerous it becomes. They're watching. Daniel gave his father a resolute nod. I'm ready. Let's do this. As they prepared for the next stage of the investigation, Daniel knew that the road ahead would be treacherous. But he was no longer the same person he was when this journey began. He was stronger, more focused, and ready to face whatever came next. He would find Robert King. And when he did, he would make sure the truth came to light no matter the cost. This chapter sets the stage for the final confrontation and reveals more about the powerful enemy Daniel is up against. His determination grows stronger, but the danger is more real than ever. Daniel knew that to bring down Robert King and the organization his mother had uncovered, he needed more than just determination. He needed allies, people who could help him infiltrate the network, expose its leaders, and finally bring justice to those who had caused so much suffering. But trust was a fragile thing. Daniel couldn't afford to make the same mistakes his mother had. She had trusted the wrong people, and it had cost her everything. He couldn't risk that again. That night, as Daniel sat at his desk, reviewing the information Matthews had provided, a knock on his door startled him. His pulse quickened as he stood up to answer it. To his surprise, standing in the doorway was an old acquaintance, Sophia, a former journalist and one of the few people who had worked alongside his mother years ago. Her face was tired, her eyes shadowed with worry, but there was a glimmer of something in her expression, a resolve that matched his own. Daniel, Sophia said softly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I've been following the trail. I know what you're trying to do. And I want to help. Daniel raised an eyebrow, surprised by her sudden appearance. How did you find me? Sophia smirked. You're not exactly hiding, Daniel. The story of your mother's investigation and your quest for the truth is all over the underground networks. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I knew you'd need help. Daniel studied her carefully. He hadn't seen Sophia in years, but he knew she had the skills, the tenacity, and the resources to help him navigate this web of deception. But could he trust her? Could anyone be trusted in this dangerous game? I don't know if I can trust you, Sophia, Daniel said, his voice cautious. The last thing I need is someone who's going to double-cross me. Sophia sighed, running a hand through her hair. I get it. I understand the hesitation. But your mother and I, we were close. I know what she uncovered. I know what she was up against. And I can help you finish what she started. Daniel hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. All right. But we do this my way. I don't take risks with people I don't trust. Sophia smiled, a hint of respect in her eyes. Fair enough. Let's take down King together. With Sophia's help, Daniel began to make real progress in his investigation. They hacked into databases, followed leads, and uncovered documents that linked Robert King to even more powerful figures than Daniel had ever imagined. The network was far-reaching, almost global, and the further they dug, the more dangerous it became. One afternoon, as Daniel and Sophia sifted through a stack of old documents, a phone call interrupted their work. It was Matthews, his voice tense. "Daniel, you need to listen to me," Matthews said urgently. "They know you're close. They've been watching you." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What do you mean? Who's watching me?" "They've got eyes everywhere on you, on Sophia, on everyone you've been in contact with," Matthews replied. "It's only a matter of time before they come for you. You need to leave. Now." Daniel glanced at Sophia, her expression grim. "We can't stop now, Matthews. We've come too far. I need to know what's going on. Who are these people? Who's behind King?" Matthews paused, then spoke in a low voice. "Daniel, what I'm about to tell you, it changes everything. Robert King is just a pawn. The real power is far above him. They've been manipulating governments, corporations, even military operations. They control the world from the shadows. And they won't stop until they have complete control." Daniel's blood ran cold. "You're telling me that this isn't just a criminal organization? This is a global conspiracy?" "Yes," Matthews said. "And you're in the middle of it now. The more you dig, the more dangerous it becomes. If you want the truth, you need to go after the people who are really behind this. But be careful, if you get too close, you might not come back." Daniel hung up the phone, his mind reeling. This was bigger than he ever imagined. They weren't just up against King, they were up against a global network of power and corruption. He looked over at Sophia, who had been listening quietly. "We need to go deeper. We need to find the real people behind all of this. We need to end this, once and for all." Sophia nodded. "Agreed. But it's not going to be easy. If we want to take them down, we have to play by their rules, and that means taking risks." The more Daniel and Sophia uncovered, the more they realized that they were up against a force unlike anything they had ever faced. The conspiracy they were fighting wasn't just about money or power, it was about control. The people behind it were seeking to reshape the world in their image, and they would do anything to protect their secrets. As they continued to dig, they uncovered a hidden meeting, a high-level summit where the leaders of the conspiracy would gather to make their plans. But the summit was being held in a remote location, deep in the mountains, and it was heavily guarded. It was a place where the leaders of the network could meet without fear of being watched. Daniel and Sophia knew that if they could get inside, they could finally uncover the truth and expose the entire operation. But they also knew that this would be their most dangerous mission yet. "We have to get in," Daniel said, his eyes burning with determination. This is the only chance we have. Sophia nodded, her face serious. I'll help you, Daniel. But you need to understand we might not come out of this alive. This is bigger than anything we've faced so far. I'm willing to risk it, Daniel replied. I'll do whatever it takes. The night of the summit arrived, and Daniel and Sophia prepared for what would be their final confrontation. They had gathered the necessary equipment, planned their infiltration, and were ready to face whatever awaited them. As they neared the summit location, Daniel's mind raced. This was at the moment where everything would be revealed. The network, Robert King, and the people behind it all, they would finally be exposed. But at what cost? They approached the heavily guarded compound, the cold mountain air biting at their skin. Every step felt like a step closer to danger, but Daniel was determined. He had come too far to back down now. Sophia looked at him, her expression fierce. Stay focused, Daniel. We can do this. With a deep breath, Daniel nodded. They moved swiftly, using the cover of night to slip past the guards and enter the compound. Inside, they found a large conference room where the leaders of the network were gathered. Daniel's heart pounded as he stepped into the room, the truth just within reach. He had no idea who was waiting for him or what they would do when they realized who he was. But as he took his first step into the room, the lights flickered, and a cold voice rang out from the darkness. I've been expecting you, Daniel. Daniel froze as the voice echoed through the room, his heartbeat thundering in his chest. The words "I've been expecting you" hung in the air, thick with menace. The lights flickered one more time, and then the room was bathed in an eerie, unnatural glow. The leader of the network stepped out from the shadows, Robert King himself. Daniel's blood ran cold. He had known that one day he would face him, but he had never imagined it would be like this. King, the mastermind behind everything, was finally standing before him, his cold eyes locked onto Daniel's with a chilling intensity. King, Daniel spat, his fists clenched at his sides. It's over. You can't hide anymore. I know everything. King's lips curled into a smile, but it was far from reassuring. You think you've uncovered everything? You've only scratched the surface, Daniel. The truth you seek is far more dangerous than you realize. Sophia, standing beside Daniel, instinctively reached for her gun. But Daniel stopped her with a look. He knew this wasn't just about the confrontation. They needed more than weapons, they needed to outwit King. You've ruined so many lives, Daniel said, his voice low but filled with fury. My mother, the people you've manipulated and destroyed, how many more have to suffer for your greed? King's expression remained calm, almost bored. Your mother was a threat. She had the potential to expose everything we've worked so hard to build. And you? You're just a pawn, Daniel. You're no different from her. But unlike her, You won't be allowed to live after you've uncovered too much. Daniel's breath hitched, but his resolve only grew stronger. I won't stop. I'll make sure everyone knows who you are. Your empire of lies will fall. King chuckled darkly, taking a slow step toward them. You think you can take me down? You think anyone will believe you? You're just a kid who doesn't know the real world. You've been running on your mother's coattails. She was a fool, and now you'll pay for her mistakes. The words stung, but Daniel didn't let it show. He had heard enough. You're wrong, King. You're the fool if you think you can control everything forever. Before Daniel could react, King's hand shot out, grabbing a nearby chair and throwing it aside. The door slammed shut, locking them inside. The sound of footsteps echoed, and suddenly, Daniel realized he wasn't just facing King. He was facing a whole network of enemies. Suddenly, the room was filled with masked figures. Black-clad men, agents of the network, surrounded them. There was no way out. The walls were closing in. Sophia quickly assessed the situation, her eyes scanning for any potential escape routes. This isn't good, she muttered. We've walked right into their trap. Daniel took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. There has to be a way out. We can't let him win. King's smirk widened as he watched Daniel and Sophia realize the gravity of their situation. You thought you could take me down with a few questions and some half-baked information. It doesn't work that way. I've built an empire. I control everything: governments, corporations, and now, even you. Daniel's fists clenched. We're not done yet. We know enough to destroy everything you've built. The truth will get out, no matter what you do. King's eyes flashed with irritation. You still don't understand. There are things in motion you can't even begin to comprehend. You're too late. And now, you're a liability. As King's words lingered in the air, Daniel felt a sudden, unsettling pressure building. The masked men were closing in. Each step was calculated, synchronized, as though they had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Sophia whispered, "There's no way out, Daniel. We need to fight our way through." But Daniel knew it wasn't going to be that easy. This wasn't a simple fight. This was a war that spanned the world. And these men, they weren't just hired guns. They were the very backbone of King's operation. A sudden, deafening noise broke the tension. The loud bang of a gunshot echoed through the warehouse. One of the masked men fell to the ground, a bullet lodged in his chest. Daniel spun around in surprise, and through the smoke-filled air, another figure emerged. It was Matthews. "Get down!" Matthews shouted, his gun raised. Another shot rang out, taking down another of King's men. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Matthews had come to help them, but there was no time to celebrate. The remaining masked men raised their weapons, moving with military precision. "We have to move, now," Matthews urged. "There's no time to waste." Sophia fired at the approaching men, covering Daniel as he ducked behind a stack of crates. Matthews stayed on the offensive, taking down any of King's men who dared to approach. "I'll keep them occupied," Matthews shouted, his voice urgent. "Go, now. Find the control room and shut this place down. We need to end this now." Daniel didn't hesitate. He turned to Sophia, who nodded, her eyes focused and determined. They darted across the room, taking cover where they could. The fight wasn't over yet, but Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. If they could reach the control room, they might be able to stop the operation and bring down King once and for all. But as they neared the door to the control room, a voice echoed from the shadows. This time, it was King's. "Do you think you can stop me, Daniel? You're nothing but a child playing in a world of giants." Daniel's teeth ground together. "You've underestimated me for the last time." With a single push, Daniel kicked open the door to the control room. It was filled with monitors, each one displaying images of their every move, tracking their every step. Daniel and Sophia were surrounded by screens, but Daniel knew what he had to do. He rushed toward the main console, smashing the glass with his fist. He wasn't going to let King's empire keep running. He had to end it, now. Sophia stood guard, taking out anyone who tried to get in their way. Meanwhile, Daniel typed in the codes he'd stolen from the network's database. The more he typed, the more the systems began to lock down. He could hear King's voice growing more frantic, more desperate, as his empire started to crumble. "You can't do this, Daniel. You'll regret it." King's voice boomed from the speakers, his anger seeping into every word. But it was too late. The last code was entered, and the entire network crashed. The lights flickered and went out, the screens went black. The power in the facility shut down. As the lights went out, an eerie silence fell over the warehouse. Daniel and Sophia stood frozen for a moment, the weight of their victory sinking in. They had done it. They had taken down the network. But even in the silence, Daniel knew it wasn't over. King might have been defeated, but the people who had worked with him were still out there, and they would want revenge. The world had just shifted, and now, Daniel would have to navigate the fallout. "We did it," Sophia said, breathing a sigh of relief. "But this isn't over. The real fight starts now." Daniel nodded, his eyes scanning the dark room. "We've won the battle, but the war is far from over. There's still so much more to do." This chapter escalates the tension as Daniel and Sophia finally confront Robert King and take down his empire. However, the victory is bittersweet, knowing that even though they've made a significant move, the network's influence remains and more danger is on the horizon. The echoes of victory were short-lived as Daniel and Sophia stood among the shattered screens and flickering lights. The network had been taken down, its digital heart had been destroyed. The power of Robert King and his empire crumbled in front of their eyes, but in the silence that followed, a new kind of fear crept in. The sound of footsteps filled the darkened warehouse, slowly approaching. Daniel turned to see Matthews walking toward them, his expression grim but relieved. He had played a crucial role in the fight, but now the real challenge was only beginning. "We did it," Daniel said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "It's over. King's empire is destroyed." Matthews nodded, but his face was clouded with concern. "For now, maybe. But there's something you're not seeing, Daniel." Sophia, wiping blood from her cheek, glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "We shut it all down. The files are gone. The system's crashing." Matthews shook his head. "This isn't just about one man or one organization. The network's influence reaches far beyond King. What you've taken down is only the surface. The infrastructure, the money, the people behind him, they're still in motion. And worse, there are those who will want to avenge King's death." Daniel's stomach tightened. "So, this fight isn't over." Matthew's eyes darkened. "Not by a long shot. Robert King wasn't just a figurehead. He was a part of something much older, more secretive. The people who backed him, the ones who kept him in power, they'll stop at nothing to rebuild what we've destroyed. And they'll come after anyone who was involved in taking him down." Daniel's mind raced. He had always known this wasn't going to be easy, but the scale of the operation, the scope of the conspiracy, it was more massive than he had ever imagined. The battle had shifted from taking down a man to fighting an entire system of corruption, manipulation, and power. "We need to go after them," Daniel said, his voice low but filled with a renewed fire. "We can't let this stand. We've taken down the figurehead, but we have to find the ones who pulled the strings. They can't be allowed to rebuild." Sophia looked at Daniel, her eyes hard with determination. "We'll do it. But we have to be smarter this time. We don't just attack head-on. We need to infiltrate. We need to be strategic. The network's bigger than anything we've fought so far." The days that followed were filled with tension and planning. Daniel and Matthews worked around the clock, digging deeper into the network's structure, finding old contacts, and uncovering new leads. But with each piece of the puzzle they uncovered, the danger increased. They weren't just dealing with rogue businessmen anymore, they were up against an underground network with ties to governments, military, and intelligence agencies. The more they learned, the more impossible it seemed to take down. One evening, Daniel sat in a dimly lit room, his fingers hovering over the keys of his laptop. The weight of the situation hung heavily on him. It had been weeks since the raid on King's compound, and every move they made was met with resistance. The network was reeling from their loss, but it wasn't backing down. It had simply gone underground, rebuilding, recalibrating. Suddenly, a message popped up on the screen, a cryptic series of numbers and symbols. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. It was a code, a message from an unknown source. As he deciphered it, the meaning became clear: the next phase of the operation is in motion. We know you're coming. You can't stop what's already been set in motion. Daniel stared at the screen, the realization dawning on him like a cold wave. The network had anticipated their every move. They had known all along that someone would try to take them down. This was part of their plan. Daniel had become a part of the game, and now, they were going to play him like a pawn. We've been set up, Daniel muttered under his breath. This isn't just about stopping them anymore. They know we're coming. They're luring us in. Matthews, who had been sitting across the room, stood up sharply. They know. They're watching us, Daniel. We've become the hunted. The wall seemed to close in on Daniel as he absorbed the full weight of their situation. The network had known all along. They had been playing them, letting them think they were in control, all while setting their own plan in motion. It's a trap, Daniel said, his voice tight with frustration. Everything we've done has led us to this point. They knew we would come for them. And now, they're going to make sure we don't get out alive. Sophia, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. We have to face it head on. If we back down now, they win. We've come too far to stop. Daniel turned to Matthews. What do you think? Can we do this? Can we really take them down? Matthews met his gaze, his eyes hard with determination. We have no choice. They'll never let us go. And if we don't strike now, they'll come for us. But we need to be smart. This isn't about brute force. We need to infiltrate their networks, expose them for what they really are. It's the only way to destroy them from the inside out. Daniel clenched his fists. The game had changed. They weren't just fighting criminals, they were fighting a global conspiracy. And if they were going to win, they had to be more than just survivors. They had to be strategists, warriors, and, most of all, they had to be willing to sacrifice everything. Let's finish this, Daniel said, his voice filled with resolve. It's all or nothing. Their plan was simple: infiltrate the network's most secure operation, gain access to the data that would expose the global conspiracy, and broadcast it to the world. But simple plans rarely go off without a hitch. As they prepared for their final assault, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Everywhere he went, every move he made, he felt eyes on him, hidden, patient, waiting. They knew they were coming. And this time, there was nowhere to hide. The operation took them to a remote location in the mountains, where the network had set up a covered facility to house their most sensitive operations. The air was thin, the landscape barren, and the facility itself was a fortress. Daniel, Matthews, and Sophia snuck through the perimeter under the cover of darkness, using every tool at their disposal to disable the security systems. As they made their way deeper into the heart of the facility, Daniel felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. This was their moment. But as they entered the final room, the heart of the operation, Daniel felt a cold, sickening realization settle over him. They weren't alone. "Good job making it this far," a voice said from the shadows. Daniel spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his gun. But it was too late. They were surrounded. The lights flickered on, revealing a dozen armed men, each wearing the same black uniform Daniel had seen during his previous encounters. And standing at the front of the group was someone Daniel never expected to see. Tom. His father. "You." Daniel said, his voice cracking in disbelief. "What the hell is this?" Tom's face was emotionless, his eyes cold and distant. "You should have stayed away, Daniel. You should have listened to me. But now, it's too late." Daniel's world shattered in an instant. His father, his flesh and blood, was part of the conspiracy all along. Everything he had fought for, every ounce of trust he had placed in the man who raised him, had been a lie. "You've been working with them this whole time." Daniel's voice was filled with a mixture of rage and hurt. "You were a part of all this." Tom didn't flinch. "I had no choice, Daniel. They control everything. Your mother was foolish to think she could take them down. And you're no different." The air was thick with tension, heavier than ever, as Daniel stood face to face with the man he had trusted more than anyone in his life, his own father. Tom's eyes were cold, unflinching, as he stood surrounded by the armed men of the network. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Daniel had ever imagined. His entire world had just been turned upside down. "Why?" Daniel's voice was barely a whisper, tinged with disbelief and anger. "Why, Dad? After everything, you've been working with them." Tom's expression remained unreadable, his jaw set. "I had no choice, Daniel. You don't understand. I never wanted this life for you, but the network, they control everything. I've tried to keep you safe, to keep you out of this." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, his fists clenching as the weight of his father's words sank in. "Safe," he repeated bitterly. "By lying to me. By letting me dig into this, by letting me believe that I was doing something good." Tom's gaze faltered for just a moment, but then it hardened again. "I did what I thought was right. But you're too far in now. You've seen too much. There's no going back, Daniel. They'll never let you live. Sophia, who had been standing next to Daniel, took a step forward, her voice steady but filled with fury. You've been playing both sides this whole time. Your wife was killed, and now you're here, working for these monsters. Tom turned to her with a cold, almost regretful look. Your mother's death was a tragedy, but it wasn't my doing. You need to understand this is bigger than anything you can imagine. You think you can take down the network. You think you can expose them. They're too powerful. If you keep pushing, they'll destroy everything you love. The words hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. His mind raced, trying to process what his father was saying. The network had more power than he could have ever imagined. But still, Daniel's resolve remained strong. His mother had died fighting for the truth. And now, it was his turn to finish what she started. I'm not backing down, Daniel said, his voice low and resolute. I'll bring them down, even if it costs me everything. Tom's expression darkened as he stepped closer to Daniel. You're a fool, Daniel. You don't even know what they're capable of. If you keep going down this path, you'll be lost. I'd rather be lost than live a lie, Daniel shot back, his eyes burning with determination. Without another word, Tom turned to the men surrounding them. Take them, he ordered coldly. Get rid of them. The masked figures moved in quickly, their guns aimed at Daniel and Sophia. But before they could get any closer, Daniel made a split-second decision. He grabbed Sophia's arm and pulled her back into the shadows, using the chaos in the room as cover. They ducked behind a set of heavy crates, out of sight, as the armed men began to search the area. This is our chance, Daniel whispered, his voice tight. We have to get out of here, now. Sophia nodded, but her face was filled with concern. This is getting worse by the minute. We don't have much time. Daniel's mind raced. They had to expose Tom and the entire network. But they couldn't do it alone. They needed help. They needed to contact Matthews, someone who could assist them in bringing this whole operation down. Without hesitation, Daniel pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to Matthews, "We've been compromised. Tom is working with the network. Need backup. Now." The sound of footsteps grew louder, and Daniel could feel the panic rising in his chest. They were running out of time. If they didn't move soon, they would be trapped. We need to make a run for it, Daniel said, his heart pounding in his chest. Sophia hesitated for a moment but then nodded. Let's go. They sprinted toward the back exit, keeping low to avoid being seen. The sound of gunfire echoed through the facility as the network's men tried to catch up to them. But Daniel wasn't going to let this be the end. Not after everything they had sacrificed. Daniel and Sophia barely managed to escape the facility. Their breaths came in ragged gasps as they ran through the dense forest behind the compound, the night air cold against their skin. The sound of their pursuers echoed in the distance, but they kept moving, each step fueled by the burning desire to finish what they had started. "We can't stop now," Daniel said, his voice urgent. "We have to expose the truth. We've come too far." Sophia nodded, though her face was tight with worry. "I agree. But we need to be smart. The network won't just let us walk away. They'll come after us with everything they have." Daniel clenched his jaw, his mind running through the options. He knew they couldn't keep running forever. They had to find a way to turn the tide, to hit the network where it hurt the most. And the only way to do that was to take down the people behind it, all the true leaders of the conspiracy. "We need to get back to the city," Daniel said, his voice steady. "We need to contact Matthews and anyone else we can trust. If we can expose the people who are really behind all of this, we can end it once and for all." Sophia's eyes were filled with determination. "Then we go back. We finish this, Daniel." They moved through the night, not stopping until they reached a small safe house that Matthews had set up for them. The moment they walked through the door, they were greeted by Matthews himself, his expression grim but relieved to see them. "I got your message," Matthews said, his voice low. "It's worse than I thought. Tom was a mole. He's been working with them the whole time." Daniel nodded, his jaw clenched with anger. "We know. But we can't just sit here and wait for them to come after us. We need to expose them, all of them. And we need to do it fast." Matthews crossed his arms, his eyes thoughtful. "I've been gathering intel on the leaders behind the network. It's not just about King anymore. There's a whole system in place, a group of people who've been pulling the strings for decades." "We know," Daniel replied. "But we can't get close without exposing ourselves. We need a way to infiltrate their meetings. To get hard evidence of what they're really doing." Matthews studied Daniel for a long moment before nodding. "I have a plan. But it's risky. If we're going to take them down, we have to get inside the inner circle. We have to make them believe you're one of them." Daniel felt a cold chill crawl down his spine. "You want me to infiltrate their network?" "Yes," Matthews said, his tone grave. "If we want to bring this to an end, we need to get to the heart of the operation. And that means becoming a part of it." The following days were filled with tense preparation. Matthews provided Daniel with everything he needed: documents, false identities, and access to the network's encrypted communications. Daniel would need to step into the lion's den once again, this time with more at stake than ever. "You have to play the part," Matthews warned, his voice serious. "They'll be watching you. If you slip up, they'll know. And if they know you're a threat." Daniel finished the sentence for him. I'll be dead before I can even blink. Sophia, who had been silently watching the preparations, finally spoke. This is insane, Daniel. You're risking everything to expose them. But we don't have much of a choice. I know, Daniel replied, his voice unwavering. This is the only way. He knew the risks were enormous. He was about to walk straight into the heart of the enemy's territory, pretending to be one of them. If he failed, there would be no coming back. But Daniel didn't have any other choice. It was all or nothing now. The days that followed were filled with tension as Daniel moved deeper into the network, pretending to be one of them, pretending to be just another pawn in their game. But every moment was a calculated risk. Every move he made, every word he spoke, was under the watchful eye of the people who had once killed his mother. He had to play his role perfectly, or it would be his last. Sophia stayed behind the scenes, feeding him information, making sure he didn't slip up. Matthews, too, had a hand in the game, coordinating their next move from afar. But it was all leading to this moment, the moment Daniel would finally confront the true leaders of the network. Daniel sat in a lavish, dimly lit room, surrounded by the men and women who had orchestrated years of corruption, deceit, and murder. They sat in a circle, their faces calm and calculating, as if they had everything under control. But Daniel knew the truth. They were just as scared as he was. Because if he succeeded, it would be their downfall. This is it, Daniel whispered to himself, his fingers tightening around the concealed gun hidden beneath his jacket. He had no intention of using it, not yet. But it was his last line of defense if things went south. Suddenly, the doors to the room opened, and in walked Robert King, the man who had been the face of the network's operations. His expression was cold, filled with contempt as he surveyed the room. The people in the room fell silent, their respect for him obvious, but Daniel could see through the facade. King wasn't just a leader, he was a puppet, and the true masterminds were somewhere hidden deeper. But this was his moment. This was where everything would end. Gentlemen and ladies, King's voice broke through the silence, calm yet commanding. We've come a long way. And it seems we have a new player in our midst, someone with ambition, someone with a dangerous will to uncover our secrets. Daniel, you've played your part well. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. It was time. Stop pretending, King, Daniel said, standing up. His voice was steady, though his pulse was racing. I know who you are. I know who's behind all of this. And it ends tonight. The room exploded into whispers, a few of them standing up in alarm, but King didn't move. He merely studied Daniel, his eyes narrowed with interest. You think you can bring me down, Daniel? King said, his voice dripping with disdain. You're nothing but a tool, just like your mother. You were never supposed to get this far. Daniel's jaw clenched as he took a step forward, his gaze hardening. You killed her. You killed my mother because she got too close to the truth. But now I'm here to finish what she started. King's face twisted into a grin, but there was no humor in it. You're delusional. You don't understand the power we have. The world you think you know. It's nothing more than a shadow. And you'll never change that. Before Daniel could respond, one of the network's agents lunged at him, drawing a knife from his belt. The room erupted into chaos. Daniel barely had time to react. He dodged the agent's strike, the knife slashing through the air just inches from his face. In one fluid motion, he drew his gun and shot the agent in the leg, sending him collapsing to the ground. Another agent charged at him, but Daniel was faster. He disarmed the man with a swift twist of his arm, using the agent's momentum to send him crashing into a nearby wall. The others in the room were scrambling, some reaching for their weapons, others trying to escape. But Daniel wasn't interested in them. His focus was on King, the one man who had orchestrated it all. King stepped back, his face a mask of rage. You think you can kill me? You think you can take everything I've built and just walk away? I don't need to kill you, Daniel said, his voice unwavering. I just need to expose you. The world will know what you've done, and you'll lose everything. All the power you've gained will crumble to dust. King's expression faltered for a moment, and that was when Daniel saw it: fear. The true fear of losing everything. King had built his empire on manipulation, lies, and violence, but in the end, all it took to bring him down was the truth. With a final, desperate motion, King lunged at Daniel, trying to overpower him. But Daniel had prepared for this moment. In one quick motion, he pinned King to the ground, using the man's own weight against him. His gun was pressed to King's temple as he spoke the final words that would shatter the network's reign. You're finished, Daniel whispered. The following hours were a blur of movement and chaos. As soon as King was taken down, Daniel called Matthews and Sophia, who quickly joined him at the facility. Matthews had already alerted the authorities, and soon, the place was swarming with law enforcement. The network's influence had crumbled, but now the real work began. Daniel stood before the room, holding the evidence of King's crimes: his connections, the bribes, the killings, the manipulation. It was all there in black and white. He had made sure to record everything, knowing that King's empire wouldn't fall just by pulling a trigger. The truth needed to be exposed, for everyone to see. As the police rounded up the remaining agents, Daniel and Sophia made their way to the control room, where they uploaded the files to the internet, releasing everything to the world. The moment the files went live, the consequences were immediate. Headlines blared, news stations picked up the story, and the world began to wake up to the truth. King's influence, once vast and unchallenged, began to unravel. World governments, corporations, and powerful figures who had been complicit in the network's operation found themselves exposed, facing investigations and trials. But the victory was bittersweet. As the network collapsed, Daniel couldn't help but feel the weight of his mother's absence. She had died fighting for this truth, and now, it was finally out there. But she wasn't here to see it. Sophia stood beside him, her expression tired but proud. "We did it, Daniel. We brought them down." Daniel nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. "We did. But it came at a cost. We lost a lot of good people, including my mother. And we can't forget that." He turned to face Sophia, his resolve stronger than ever. "But this is just the beginning. We've exposed the truth, but there's still more to be done. We need to rebuild, to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Sophia smiled, a weary but knowing smile. "I think that's a fight worth having." Daniel looked out across the city, the first rays of dawn breaking through the dark clouds. It had been a long, hard journey, but in the end, they had won. The truth had prevailed, and the world would never be the same again. Months passed, and the world began to heal. The network, once a hidden force of corruption, was dismantled, piece by piece. The global conspiracy that had manipulated governments and economies was no more. But even as Daniel watched the news reports of trials and arrests, he knew the fight for justice was far from over. He had become a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the truth could still shine through. He worked with law enforcement, helping them track down the remaining members of the network and bring them to justice. But as Daniel moved forward with his life, he knew that his journey was far from over. The world had changed, and he was determined to make sure it never fell back into the hands of those who sought to control it. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt hope. The truth had won, and it was now up to him and those who stood with him to ensure that it stayed that way. Title: Shadows of the Network. Description: in a world where power, manipulation, and corruption rule from the shadows, Daniel is thrust into a dangerous game of deception when he uncovers the conspiracy behind his mother's death. As he follows the trail of secrets she left behind, Daniel discovers a network of influence that spans across governments, corporations, and criminal organizations, led by the elusive Robert King. With the help of Sophia, a former journalist, and Matthews, a former ally of his mother, Daniel dives deep into the heart of the network, risking everything to expose the truth. But as the web of lies unravels, Daniel learns that his own father is a key player in the conspiracy, and that the forces he's up against are more powerful and far-reaching than he ever imagined. As he faces betrayals, danger, and the weight of his mother's legacy, Daniel must make a choice: continue his fight for justice, even if it means sacrificing everything, or walk away from the truth to protect those he loves. The stakes are higher than ever as he confronts the people who control the world from the shadows, seeking to bring them down before they destroy him. Shadows of the Network is a gripping tale of ambition, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Will Daniel succeed in bringing the powerful network to its knees, or will he become just another pawn in their game? The battle for truth has only just begun.